Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call this recommending committee meeting of June 16th, 2009 to order. Are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
Yes, we are.
Thank you very much. This meeting's been posted in various locations throughout the city. The first item on the agenda is agenda item number 3, bill number 2009-22. Updates the business licensing provisions of the municipal code by adding certain administrative and service-related fees, adjusting various license fees, and license origination charges. Matt, do you have a presentation for us?
Good morning, Mr. Steinman, Councilman Steinman, Mark Vincent, Director of Finance and Business Services. With me is Jim DiFiore and Carol. Gosh, I almost called Carol Villardo, Carol Meyer. Just stuck in my head. With business services. Just by way of just a quick recap, last October when we were going through a fundamental service review, one of the things that we were asked to look at amongst many things was ways to deal with our fiscal issues in terms of cutting costs, reducing our compensation packages for our bargaining employees, as well as look at ways where we can perhaps enhance our revenue to some extent. About 13% plus or minus of our revenues council actually controls. The other vast majority of our revenues council has no control over. So with the direction you gave us last October, there have been several areas that we have been looking at throughout the city in terms of fee increases. And one of the areas that I'll let Jim and Carol talk to was in the area of licensing. One of the things that we were concerned about is there are certain fees that we haven't raised, increased for many, many years. They've been flat. In some cases almost 20 years. There are certain situations where we incur additional costs due to having to do re-inspections and things of that nature that we felt perhaps under certain circumstances there should be a fee attached to those sorts of additional rework. And we also were looking at trying to simplify some things, and when we looked at our gross fee revenue structure, I asked Jim if there was a way that we could simplify that without. The intention we had wasn't so much to increase fees with that, although there would be a slight increase with what we proposed, but that sort of gives you the background of where we're at. We certainly are bringing these items forward for consideration by council based on the direction we got last October. We recognize that things have gotten worse for us, worse for certainly the private sector. We don't really see the local economy turning around at the same schedule that perhaps the national economy might, and certainly it's going to. This is a difficult time to be raising fees on anything, so we recognize that. So, with that sort of introduction, I'll kind of let Jim, if I may, introduce the amendments that we are bringing forward to you today as a result of the meetings that we've had with the industry folks.
Okay.
Jim DiFiore, Manager of Business Services, and apologize. Been playing with a cold for the last 3 days. As Mark said, we have met with the industry, albeit not a lot of industry members have participated in the initial meetings, but about 3 weeks ago we had a City Council Chamber Industry Forum, and we had about 40 participants, which was quite significantly higher than what we had in the previous 3 meetings. From that, we took the original bills that were introduced at the City Council meeting, and we had comments that were made, and as follow-up, suggestions that were provided to us in writing about amendments or proposed amendments to the original bill. If I may, I'd like to go over some of those with each of the bills that we've made changes since that time. These are in the form of a proposed First Amendment. And Val, if I missed something, I hope you'll be able to jump in and correct me. In Bill number 2009-22, this is the bill that updates the business licensing provisions by adding administrative fees and service-related fees. In that particular bill, we have, on page 2, we have the authority that would be proposed that gives us a responsibility of charging a $120 reinspection fee if the violations are not corrected. And just to explain for the people that are here today, when we do a business license inspection on alcohol-related or other related type businesses, we put them on notice with a written notice of violation. And this bill would allow us that if we put them on notice, they know what the correction needs to be made. If we go out there the next time, there's no charge if the violation is corrected. If we have to go out the next time and the violation is not corrected, then we have the authority here by charging a $120 service charge. Subsequent inspections on that same violation, not on new ones, but on that same violation, would allow us by this proposed code to charge $180 per hour for the correction of that violation. Now, do we anticipate having a lot of money generated from this? I don't believe so. We have probably on the average about 55 re-inspections a month that would generate additional revenue, because in some cases it takes 3 or 4 times for the licensee to be able to correct those violations. Not because they're too difficult to correct, but sometimes they don't feel that it's important enough for them to do so. So in establishing this reinspection fee, we're actually mirroring what code enforcement does right now and what they've been doing for years. One of the comments that we had provided at the meeting was the 10% administrative cost, what is that used for? Well, we've built into our provision that it will cover administrative costs of billing and receiving. When we have to have the licensee pay for these, if they get charged that service charge, we're going to have to invoice them and put them on notice. This is what you need to pay, and this is the time frame that you need to pay it by. In the next paragraph down, the comment that was made at the meeting was the fee needs to be paid within a reasonable time. And the question was, what is a reasonable time? We added a 60-day provision to pay that fine that would be invoiced. And we also added, if the licensee does not believe that those charges were assessed correctly or the violation was assessed correctly, that they have an appeal process to the city manager's office once they're invoiced. And that appeal process would be in a written form of appeal to the city manager's office within 10 days. The city manager could hear that within 10 days or appoint a designee to be able to mitigate that particular issue. So we've built in a due process, per se, for these charges to be administratively heard. Moving forward, we have no changes that we've made, although we did get some input from the industry on our processing fees. Going from $30 to $50, we've left that alone. We have built in a $100 minimum fee to be paid on the first semi-annual gross business license. Right now we're having them pay $25, and we're always trying to catch up. 6 months later, we find that they should have been paying us quite significantly more than $25 initial fee. Now, if the $100 that we charge on that initial fee, we find 6 months later that based upon their gross sales that they reported, that they overpaid us, then that will be credited to the next 6-month billing cycle. So the catch-up there will be equitable, I think, to both the city and the licensee. We've added an increase in the penalty to be paid from 15% to 25%. That didn't change. And the reason we've done that is because we find that people that have been charged a 15% penalty for all of these years, it doesn't seem to bother them. And we're hoping that this will be a little bit more of an incentive for them to come back and say, I don't want to pay the 25%. I'm used to paying the 15%, but if they pay on time, then this doesn't apply to them at all. On page 4, we talk about a reinstatement fee of $50. Again, that hasn't changed from the original bill. When a license is expired, a field inspection is conducted. If the licensee is still conducting business, they're issued a notice warning that they can't operate on an expired license. They need to come in and pay their fees. When they do so, if the license is expired, they're going to have to start the process all over again. There's got to be several reasons why they don't pay their fees. Either they can't afford it, they've neglected it, things have changed, could be a change of ownership and they weren't aware of it. But that reinstatement fee, $50, is comparable to what our processing fee is on a new business license application. So again, we're covering our costs. I'm going to move forward a little bit quicker on this particular bill. On page 8, Again, we have not made any changes at this point to a non-refundable temporary licensing processing fee. For the businesses that operate ice cream trucks, mobile food vendors, and reflexology businesses, if they request a temporary business license, they will have a fee that they will pay of $250 for that to be processed in a reasonable amount of time. And when I say that, I mean probably a 2-week to 4-week period. Those are investigative licenses, and normally they take 4 to 6 months. So we believe that it's going to cover our costs to be able to process that through in a quicker period of time. Effective July 1st, as the Councilman Ross and Steinman may remember, we have a bill that was adopted a couple of months ago that allows a 90-day administrative temporary license, and then if it is extended, it comes before council. We intend to implement this on July 1st, so essentially we need to cover our costs for us to be able to do that. And again, I believe we're going to cut the period of time that a business licensee has to wait for that temporary license to be issued quite significantly down probably for a 2-week to 4-week period. On all other privilege licenses, the $500 processing fee for a temporary license would be imposed through this same bill. On privilege licenses, the processing fee would go from $30 to $100. When a corporation comes in and they wish to have a corporate officer waived for the suitability, primarily because they're not involved in the active day-to-day operations of the business, and they could be residing in Maryland or outside of the state of Nevada. Today they have an opportunity to ask for a waiver. That waiver fee is $50 today. We're asking that be raised to $100. In order for us to process a waiver, we do have to have some minor involvement in the determining the suitability of that particular applicant. That could require us forwarding a request to Metro to determine preliminary suitability. It could, at the request of our office, to be able to say, show us what you will be doing or will not be doing, and show us that you're not a bad person, so that we can move forward with your waiver of suitability. So there is some administrative costs in being able to do that, and we believe, again, that the increase should be from $50 to $100 when they make that request. And moving forward on this bill, on page 13, again, this has not been changed from the original bill, but I want to stress in the licensing of real estate developers today, they pay us a fee of 1% of their monthly sales, our average monthly sales, and we're asking that to be reduced to the new gross fee schedule. And if it goes forward as a 0.00060, I think we're looking at over 1,000% decrease in that particular bill. And we wanted to be consistent with how we bill other gross licensed businesses, and that real estate developer fee has been in the code for probably 25 to 30 years. So in an effort to try to make as consistent as we can the business license fees, this is actually being reduced from the 1% down to whatever we determine the percentage to be. That pretty much concludes Bill number 2009-22. If you wish, we'll stop there and address this particular bill before we move on to the next bill.
Do you have any questions, Councilman?
Mr. Chairman, I'd actually like to hear from the industry with your permission.
I'd like to open up the public part of this hearing at this time, and if you are interested in making comments to us, please come forth, sit in this chair over here with that microphone, if you would, please, and try to limit your comments. Let's keep it to 3 minutes. Okay. Anybody, first person wishing to make comments, please come forth. Thank you. Your name and address for the record, please.
For the record, Carol Velardo, Nevada Taxpayers Association, 2303 East Sahara Avenue, Las Vegas 89104. Yeah, I have a comment relative to the administrative charges. I appreciate, first thing I want to say is Mr. DiFiore and Mr. Vincent and providing me, because I'm a latecomer to this, having been at the legislative session, all the information that they did. And that I am most grateful for. One of the concerns I have, and I did put this in writing to both Mr. Vincent and Mr. DiFiore, is I have no problem with analyzing fees. I'm on the SAGE Commission, and as a matter of fact, my area happens to be fees. And we're recommending for state agencies that they periodically review their fees and that the fees have a limited administrative amount. What concerns me is the $180 fee for the re-inspections. It strikes me, and I agree, that there are personnel issues involved and people have to go out, but for that you establish an hourly fee. And I am going on that by work that I've done previously with legislation on bank inspections. When you have to go out more than you anticipate, you set an hourly fee based on what the wages are of the person so that you're recouping that cost, not $180 an hour. That just strikes me as extremely exorbitant. And so that would be one of my recommendations in that. The other one I have a concern with, and I understand 15%, some people may ignore, but when you take a look today at the current economy, I think going to 25% is a bit much. At the very least, I'd rather see it at 15%. I mean, I look at Department of Tax that I work with constantly, and there the maximum fee is 12%. And when you set those types of fees on, it's normally done so that it does not pay for the person to treat the revenue they're supposed to be paying as a bank. That interest rate is fairly substantial at 15%. So particularly in this economy, I do have a problem. I think if you are having a problem, that the way to address that is to add a provision where if you are habitually delinquent, defined as 2 or 3 more times, and again, I'm going to go back to tax because I have the most familiarity with that. If you are delinquent more than 3 times within 36 consecutive months, then you're literally called on the carpet. You might want 2 times. But I do think most people, particularly in this economy, yes, may be late, but not to the point where they deserve 25%. But I agree. If you have a habitual delinquent, you need to get their attention. And so that would be my recommendation for a change in that area.
Would you, your 3 minutes are up, would you wrap up, please?
I'm finished with that section.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
For the next one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next person wishing to speak, please. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Kip Cooper, Greater Las Vegas Association of Realtors, 1750 East Sahara. Actually, I'll echo Carol's sentiments because she pretty much was very eloquent in the areas that we were most concerned on this bill. In particular, the 25% 25% of the entire fee assessed we felt was far too stiff. We'd also like for the council to look at the timeline that's within that. It's a 15-day currently. We'd like to see that increased to 30 days, which is more in keeping with other businesses. Another area of concern that we had was when the licenses would be deemed expired, and that was also after 30 days. We'd like to see the council take into consideration a 60-day period before they expired a license, particularly when we're dealing with non-privileged licenses. Actually, those were the only 2 major areas of concern that we had with Bill number 22.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next person wishing to speak, please. Identify yourself. Seeing no one else, I'll close the public hearing. And Councilman, you have questions?
Well, I've got some comments, and I want to let staff know that I do recall what came out of those council meetings clearly, and applaud your efforts in trying to address these issues. Several parts of this I can support. Many of them, the whole flavor of this bill I cannot support, especially due to these economic times. And I'm a firm believer in cost recovery, and that's important, that the taxpayer is not carrying the burden of the businesses and the industries in the city of Las Vegas. But at the same time, it's the whole flavor of this bill and the next one, when we get to that I'm concerned about. And I appreciate you, Mr. DeFiore, for having that industry forum. And I would ask staff, did the industries that are going to be affected by this give you their input? And is that what came to the amendments to this bill? Is that what came about?
Yes, it is. We actually took verbal comments at the meeting and also written comments through the rest of the week at that meeting, which led to some of the changes that we have here today.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to see a show of hands of everybody in this room that attended that forum. Good. That's good. That's good. Due to the economic environment, and you've heard me say this before in council meetings and in briefings, we've got to make it easier for businesses to do business in the city of Las Vegas. I can support moving forward with this bill at this time due to the economic environment. I agree that we need to raise fees if they haven't been raised for years. That's significant, but I don't think it's time now to place that burden on businesses who are struggling for their mere survival today. And I'm quite concerned about those businesses that are going to be affected by this bill. So I think that's all I wanted to add to that,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
I'm, you haven't raised fees for some cases 30 years, and it comes at, yes, probably the wrong time. The next bill we're going to consider has an effective date of January 1, but this bill has an effective date of July 1. Can you tell me, Jim, why the difference between the two on effective dates?
Well, I think when we first created these bills, again, they're probably almost a year old now. We had these bills prepared for council consideration, I believe, in the summertime of last year. But at that time, we started to discuss amongst the city staff the fundamental service review. And I believe it was Councilman Brown that at one of our meetings suggested that any bill coming forward for business licensing or for other departments, that we pull out any fee increases and we have those come back to the city council during the fundamental service review. So the original bills had a July 1st, 2009 effective date. The first bill that we're talking about today, we didn't change that date because I believe we felt we were coming forward at a time where we'd give the industry enough notice to be able to make some adjustments. And in most senses, the first bill is going to be talking about service cost related fees and not a new business license fee that would impact them immediately. We certainly can adjust that effective date to whatever we deem is appropriate. And the other thing, one of the reasons why we didn't change it is because the council has already adopted the bill that is going to allow us an administrative 90-day temporary license, which will go into effect July 1st. And we felt with this piece being built in, we wanted to see as close as we could, when that new bill went into effect, how quickly this bill would go into effect to allow us to be able to charge those service costs for the administrative temporary license.
If I may, Councilman, that 90-day administrative approval speaks to the issue that Councilman Ross mentioned as making it easier for folks to do business. It's a way to speed up the process and get their businesses open, but there's still a cost associated with that, and so we felt that there would be a fee attached to that. It was an issue of trying to speed up the process.
Yeah, I think I'd like to follow the motion if I can, Councilor.
Sure, I'm ready for a motion.
Well, let me explore comments. I think there are some legitimate issues in the bill. I'm still not satisfied from the industry, for the industry's sake, and several of the industries that we do business with here at the city of Las Vegas, that this is the right time. I would recommend that we go back and look at this a little more in detail with those industries that are going to be affected by that. I'd like the industry support as we move forward. And none of the industry is going to support everything. We understand that. But again, when I have, especially in Ward 6, a record number of businesses who have already closed their doors or on the verge of, I cannot support increasing these fees at this time, even though I do want to recoup those costs. I'm having a hard time with it. And with that, Councilman, I would make a recommendation to strike this agenda item.
You wish to obey it? You wish to obey it?
If there were some hope of reviving this in the near future, I would recommend advance. If your motion is essentially that it not go forward, I would recommend that you make a motion to send it to the council with a do not pass recommendation so that the entire council can see it and decide up or down on it. That way it doesn't just sit there in limbo.
Then that's my motion and recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
So a motion is made for a do not pass recommendation to the council. All in favor of that motion, please signify.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. It goes forward then with no recommendation, is that right, Val?
A do not pass recommendation, that's what we'll be with.
I voted no.
Okay, you're right.
So it goes with a
No
no
recommendation.
recommendation.
Will the record reflect at the council that
Yes.
that motion was made? Okay.
The next item on the agenda is item number 4, bill number 2009-23, updates the city's business license fee provisions to increase the gross sales license fee, include for certain license category annual fee adjustments based on the consumer price index and the city's growth rate, adjust license fees for certain alcoholic beverage licenses, and add provisions regarding the licensing and regulation of persons who rent or lease certain types of commercial property. Staff.
Jim DeFiore, Manager of Business Licensing. This bill was, and quite obviously was more contentious than the bill number 2009-22. We have made more changes on this particular bill than we did the previous bill. Originally, when this bill was drafted, there was a change to be made in the fee schedule for those businesses that were paying the city fees based upon gross sales. The current rate structure today is a sliding scale based upon a particular type of segment that you generate gross sales, particularly in your industry, for a 6-month period. The original proposal for this bill was to adjust the percentage of all gross sales businesses to a 0.0075 across the board. To increase that fee, we also included a CPI factor of the percentage of the CPI increase on an annual basis. Since that time, the bill has been amended to move back to a sliding scale for businesses that generate revenue up to $180,000. Their fees will not change. The proposal is that anybody that generates more revenue than $180,000 would be paying a percentage of that gross sales based upon a factor of 0.00060. In our larger businesses today, those that generate $1.2 million or above on a semi-annual basis, the percentage factor applied is a 0.00056. So this essentially would increase it by 4 1/1000ths. The other thing that we did do in this particular amendment was to remove the CPI as a measure to increase business license fees on those that pay business license fees on gross sales. So that is not a factor at this point in time. Moving forward with this particular business, or this particular bill, on flat fee businesses. The original bill contained a provision which would allow a fee increase to be adjusted based upon the annual percentage increase in the CPI, as well as the population growth percentage increase. Since that original bill, we have removed the population growth every place in that bill that would allow us to adjust it that way. And just to explain for the industry today, as we've had done so at many of the meetings, the reasons these two provisions were put in the original bills was because by state law, the state will allow you to increase business license fees based upon the CPI change and also based upon the population growth. So originally, it was built in that way to allow us to be maximized by state law. We have removed the population growth from the flat fees. Now, as proposed, that means the flat fees on an annual basis will, their rates will be adjusted based upon the percentage increase in the CPI. Over the last year, or a year ago, I believe it was, the CPI percentage increase was about 1%. So on an annual basis, we would measure that CPI increase, and we would adjust our rates based upon that. For an example, I believe it was a business paying $200, going back to the year that the CPI increase was 1%, their fee for the next year would be $205. Now, I believe this last year, there was no increase in the CPI. So when there is no increase in the CPI, no fees will be adjusted either way. So those two provisions have been made in this bill as a result of industry input. The other major area here that we have is the licensing of the businesses or the persons who rent or lease commercial space for commercial use. Originally, the bill was drafted such that they would pay a business license fee based upon the gross sales, just like every other business that does that. At the original bill, or within the original bill, that was due to be 0.00075. Since we had our last industry forum and we heard comments from the industry on this, one of the things that came out of the comments was that it would be more palatable to them to base their fee on a flat fee basis rather than gross sales. There was a lot of administrative costs that were going to be involved in determining what their gross sales were. There were a lot of factors involved, and we came back in this amendment to this draft with a flat fee scale basis, and I'll explain that. One of the comments made to me was, should a business that has a small strip mall that is 25,000 square feet be paying the same flat fee based business license fee as a Meadows Mall, which is 2 million plus in square feet? And so we looked at, quite frankly, we looked at some licensing fees that the county has on warehouse space. And we came up with a measure of adjusting the original bill down to a flat fee based upon the square footage. Today it's proposed at a $200 annual fee of those businesses that rent or lease space less than 200,000 square feet. Between 200,001 and 500,000 square feet, an annual fee of $350. 500,001 to 1 million square feet, an annual fee of $500. 1,000,001 to 2 million square feet, an annual fee of $750. And anything over 2 million square feet would be a flat fee of $1,000. Those fees, again, because they are flat fees, would be considered to be adjusted based upon the annual CPI increase. So those are the changes that were made to this particular bill based upon industry comment, and that would be my presentation on this one.
Anybody else in staff wish to make comment?
Councilman Steinman, I would add that this bill does have an effective date of January 1st, 2010.
Councilman, do you have any comment before we start?
Yeah, on page 3 there, 2-3, in categories. What's a bridge and a whist and a solo? Does anybody know?
Who's in the gaming business?
We found a typo in this table, so we added it back in just to clean up the typo. That's,
That
we,
didn't answer my question. I mean, I grew up in the gaming industry. I'm going, I've never heard those terms before.
Those are probably outdated terms, but quite frankly, I didn't want to take something out that maybe still be used.
It has a different name.
So it was partial.
Yeah. And again, Councilman, I'd like to hear from the industries
Yes.
too that attended that forum, and even those who did not attend that forum on their flavor for moving forward.
I'd like to know by a show of hands, how many people wish to speak on this bill? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 people. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna limit still 3 minutes. I'm gonna start right at that point, and I'm gonna move around the room that way.
More than fair.
Let's do it that way. You're on first. Come up, identify yourself, name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Lauren Calvert Arnold, Lionel Sawyer and Collins on behalf of World Market Center. We just have a couple real specific issues. Section 8, engaging in the business of renting or leasing property. From speaking with Jim and Carolyn from the meetings, we think the way that this is being interpreted is a little bit broad and is going to be used to capture businesses which are not truly in the business of renting or leasing property, but rather landowners. Our other issue is with Section 9. There's some ambiguity in the language on how the fees will be calculated corresponding to each of the properties. For my client, if the ambiguity in this language, under the chart, it could be as low as $1,000. If each property is interpreted in a very broad way for each small component of a building, it could go up to as much as $300,000. So to us, that's a very large ambiguity, and we'd like to see language in there to clear up the intention. That's it.
I want to ask you a question relative to market, et cetera. Each of those buildings, is it a separate ownership? Is it set up as a separate ownership, or are they owned?
It is.
It is, I believe.
Yeah, correct.
Therefore, Jim, would there be a separate business license for each building?
That's correct.
Okay.
And each office within that within the building, obviously each office is rented
That's
out.
what you're driving.
That's what I'm driving
Okay.
at.
So, she's got a point. The question is, are we gonna look at that one building of how many, little over 1 million square feet,
Correct.
in one building?
2 million.
Yeah, but it hits the high category.
Yep.
Okay? So are they gonna pay a fee of $1,000 for that one building? Or are we gonna go in and hit everybody that has a space in there? And I don't think that's the intention.
No, the
It's the
intent,
building.
the intent was the building on that one parcel, separately addressed, would be a $1,000 fee for
Okay.
that particular.
Val, do you see any issues with the wording to make sure that that's clear?
Yeah, if you've got some language you can submit to us that, if we talk about parcels, we run into obviously condominium and things like that. So something that helps your client I'll be happy to look at.
And we would love to submit that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Oh,
Next,
thank you.
please. Who's next in line? Okay, please.
Hi, I'm Andy Gruber. I'm treasurer for the Cashman Companies, 2300 West Sahara. Two things. One, as Jim was talking about the CPI increase to the fees, you mentioned, and I just want to clarify, the CPI is to be applied only to the flat fees and not to the percentage rate of .006.
That's correct.
It doesn't read that way, or I don't read it that way, so I was just looking for some clarifying wording there. You didn't
I didn't
either?
read it that way either.
Yeah, if you can tell me how, we'll look at it, but it's written so that it doesn't apply to any gross sales.
Okay, we can submit something if you'd like, and...
Yeah, well, if you can identify where it doesn't say what it's supposed to say.
Well, I guess it just says, in 60402A, persons doing business...
Yeah, everything everything in those sections is a flat rate. What you're talking about is 0005, and it's not picked up by that language.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So are these things in 005
When you see
not
030 to
subject
180, it's all flat rate businesses that are specifically called out. It doesn't affect anybody in 005, which is your
So does that
gross
mean
sales.
these rates in 005 are not subject to CPI?
Right.
Even
Correct.
these flat rates in 0?
That's right.
There-
Because the theory that we heard very clear from the industry was, pardon for the record, Mark Vincent, was that, as the economy thrives and businesses thrive, they're going to go into the next bracket. And that in itself is going to be equivalent to a CPI increase. So Jim and I talked about with that, it doesn't make any sense to be adjusting the brackets by CPI as well. We just.
No, I agree with all of that. I just assumed, I didn't understand that this 005 is
Yeah,
not
the,
subject to that. Okay.
The table, those amounts that look like flat rates are just a table amount that are kind of based on a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't characterize those as flat rates, even though we're calling them out specifically for purposes of
Gotcha.
ease of payment.
Okay. The second thing is the fees to be assessed on commercial lessors. We're just against it entirely to begin with. We feel it's a double taxation. The people who are in business at those physical locations are already paying business license fees, and to assess a business license fee on the owner of the property for the exact same property, that is essentially two business licenses on the same business. Most businesses, most lessors, pass their costs on to their tenants. So now the tenant is subject to two business licenses. Similarly, if one business next door to another, one is renting and one is owning, the guy who's renting, he's now paying two business licenses, but the guy who's owning his own property, he's paying one business license. So now you have two people competing perhaps in the same business, and you've created unfair competition. And it's just unfair and not appropriate. You know, the same could go for just an entity who owns their own property but chooses to put it in a separate company for legal liability purposes. It's still the same owners, but now because one's renting to the other, now they've created a new fee to no purpose. So we're just entirely opposed to it. Now, previously, the staff had recommended a percentage, and now they have compromised to a flat fee, which is definitely more agreeable. But we're still just opposed to the whole idea of it in the first place. It's creating a new tax. That's not fair.
Right. Anything else?
Nope.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Mr. Short, you want to make a comment too?
Thank you, Councilman. Paul Larson, Lionel Sawyer and Callers, 300 South 4th Street, representing the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to echo the comments that were previously made by Ms. Calvert and Mr. Gruber. In addition, I notice section, I believe it's section 10 of the proposed bill makes it very clear that the overall intent of this bill is to generate revenue above and beyond the cost of regulation of particular business activity. If that's the case, then this is not a fee, as a fee is traditionally understood. It is, in essence, a tax. And as you know, the recent legislative session, businesses were subject to a great deal of additional taxation. We think that seeking to recoup the costs of regulating activity as a fee is appropriate, but seeking to generate additional revenue for the city's general fund, as set forth in Section 10 of the bill, is inappropriate and is, in fact, an additional tax on business. Beyond that, to get into the specifics of the bill, any automatic fee increase that is not voted on by the City Council, we generally oppose. So, for example, Section 2, where it increases fees even in flat rates, as clarified before, based upon CPI, we would oppose. We think that if the City Council deemed it appropriate to raise fees, the City Council should do it by affirmative vote and not by an automatic mechanism in the code. So, thank you very much.
Let's go back just a minute, Paul. Would you talk about the one about he's saying this is a tax? Please, would you clarify his tax position around that, both of you?
Yeah, let me talk about
Val
that.
probably can do that better than I can, but just suffice it to say that from our position, business license fees are in fact revenue that supports more than just Jim's operations, a huge support to the general fund. So without our ability to raise revenues in that way, it would be a significant impact on the general fund. But the legal issues Val can address.
Yes, both the charter of the city and state law authorize local governments, the city, to regulate businesses both for regulatory purposes and for revenue. And traditionally, the word used was tax. And in the early days of the city, up until maybe a few years ago, our chapter talking about the taxation or the licensing of businesses uses the term license tax. That's the way it was originally identified in state law. In recent years, people like to get away from the term tax. Even the legislature now, the last several times that they've taken up this issue, has used the word license fee. And so, to the extent that we use them interchangeably, that's what this is about. Obviously, we can't do both. We can't impose a license fee and then turn around and impose another license tax. But we do, according to the legislature's example, get to pick whichever we want, and that's the one that has been picked.
The other one was, what Paul talked about, was about the, I think, section 2, and he's referring to if there's a change in fee due to consumer price index increase, you believe that should come back to council?
I believe any fee increase or any tax increase, regardless of which word you're using, should be voted by the city council and not by an automatic mechanism in the code.
Laws are just loaded with indexes that don't have to go back to governing bodies. Why do you believe this one, with an index contained therein, has to come back to a governing body? What's the difference?
I'm not saying from a legal standpoint it does have to. I'm saying from the city council should have the ability and should have the courage, for lack of a better term, to look the voters in the eye and explain why a tax increase is necessary, rather than have an automatic mechanism in the code.
Well, you don't believe that they're looking them in the eye now and saying, hey, every year it's going up by the CPI, or it's not going up if there's no increase? Isn't that looking them in the eye and saying, they're coming?
No. I think, and this is Paul Larson speaking, I'm not speaking for the chamber. At this point, I think if the city council is building in an automatic mechanism, you're avoiding confrontation with the voters by building in that kind of a mechanism.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Thank you very much, Paul. Next person is in schedule. Who was next in line over here? There was 2 hands over on this side, if I recall. Where are they? Next person. Sure.
For the record again, Carol Velardo, Nevada Taxpayers Association, and I do have a problem with the indexing. I would prefer to see it taken out, and I appreciate that it's only on the flat fees. If this should go forward, then what I would recommend is that you level the potential on the indexing to a 5-year average, and the way I would word it, and I'm happy to submit the language, is that over the prior 5 years, you will take the average of the CPI, and it will be the lesser of the cumulative average, or no more than 3%. The reason I say that, I believe there are some people in the room who might remember this late 70s and early 80s, when our inflationary rate was as high as 17%. And I don't think you want to have that hit a business at 17%, if it is the idea to continue to go through with leaving indexing in. Indexing is an automatic pilot. I agree with Paul. This is no longer a fee, it is a tax. And by very definition of the difference between a fee and a tax, a fee supports a regulatory function, a tax supports general government. And the money being raised here is more than the regulatory function. It is supporting general government, so it is properly called a tax.
Can I ask you, do you believe that the cost of government continues to rise every year?
Yes,
Okay.
in direct relationship to the amount of money they're able to receive.
Okay. All right. Next. Steve, I'm gonna get you in a second.
No problem.
Kip Cooper, representing the Greater Las Vegas Association of Realtors. We also, in Section 2, were opposed to placing the CPI and not having direct oversight by the council from year to year on the increase, steady, ever-escalating increases in these fees. In Section 8 of the bill, it says that no person shall engage in the business of renting or leasing. We're a little concerned with that language specifically. Staff has interpreted that engage in this bill means the property owner, and we would be opposed to the property owners being taxed a business license fee. In Section 9, line 4, it says, shall pay in advance an annual license fee in the amount that represents the sum of the fee amounts that correspond to each of the properties that are rented or leased by that person. Some concerns in that particular language go to the size and scope of what that rate will be applied to. And it's not clear as to whether that is an entire building structure or, as it states in the language, each of the properties that are rented or leased by that person in accordance with the following tables. So that could be a breakdown of to the actual desk fees that might be in an office, or in an office, an executive office park, it might be the particular individual offices there, and that fee could get quite exorbitant. We're also concerned that when the table was established, while it is better to have a flat fee than to have this percentage fee, that the city has looked at the county's warehouse space, and those are businesses that lease. These are businesses that are in the business of providing space and are truly their own business enterprise. This isn't a situation where they're leasing them off to a third party that is also paying a business license. This gets to the double and triple taxation issues that we're looking at. And to make things even more confusing, when we go down to line 20, C, any person who engages in business described in Section 8 of the ordinance on behalf of another, or who by doing so is subject to professional licensing under state law shall be licensed by the city under the applicable professional license category and shall pay the applicable license fee. So it is clear that they are looking for the person that actually engages in the business to have a license fee, which all of our realtors do. They're also looking for the owner of the property, and they're also looking for the tenant that is also going to be paying a business license fee. So we have triple taxation that's essentially occurring through this. We're also concerned with the language in 22, shall be licensed by the city. Professional licenses are issued by the state of Nevada. They pay a state business license fee, and then they're required to pay either a county or municipal fee wherever their license hangs, the physical structure of where their license hangs. So they're not required to hold business licenses locally in multiple jurisdictions. And this addition contradicts state law, which would require, for instance, a realtor who holds a business license with the state and a professional license with the state, and who holds their business license and an office in Henderson, from engaging in the leasing of a property that may be in Las Vegas, which they're not required under state statute to do. That, we oppose the bill.
Thank you. Any comment from staff on any of those items at all?
Yes, on Mr. Cooper's last comments, the professional categories that we have in the city of Las Vegas do include property managers, and we have consistently applied the licensing fee on a property manager if they have a based operation here in the city of Las Vegas for their office. They can have one license, and they will have, whether they property manage one property or 10,000 properties. So it's one license for a property manager license in the city. Essentially, too, we do have in our code that if there is a professional category as a property manager that is based outside of the city, currently, if you're based inside the city, we get you to submit an application for a professional category plus the number of individuals that are professionals working in that particular office here in the city. If you're based outside the city, we only get one license for the activity that you're going to conduct in the city, and we don't count the professionals that we do have that are based outside the city at your office in Henderson is used. So if there are properties that are being managed by a firm that has a home base operation in Henderson, we would just get, again, one property management license for them renting or property managing in the city of Las Vegas. That's a $200 annual fee. We wanted, this code may be looked at a little bit more, this provision that he just talked about. We wanted to be sure that if there was a property that, going forward, that we did get the developer owner to be licensed as a renter or leaser of that particular development, that we would have a license fee for that individual, which they are conducting business, and if they have a property manager assigned to that particular building, that property manager was licensed as well. I don't see that as double taxation. Two separate entities doing two different types of businesses. But, and in most cases where we do have a property manager, it's usually that property manager that will be held accountable for any issues that need to be discussed with, and as well as any mitigation of any violations of code or anything else. So that's the reason for having that provision in the code.
Thank you. Anything else? Steve, your microphone.
Councilman, thank you very much for the opportunity to come speak with you. For the record, I'm Steve Shore, Vice President of Cox Communications at 1700 Vegas Drive. I really come not just to by representing my company, but more a greater concern that I have on behalf of the business community of Southern Nevada and residents by its own nature. As a substantially larger company with nearly 1,400 employees in Southern Nevada, the impact that we have seen by the economy has been much more than we ever anticipated. In discussions with other companies and other businesses that we do business with, we know the overall impact of the economy has been so detrimental that not only are companies laying off individuals, they are many ceasing operations. Friends of mine who have owned companies in this town for 25 years have now ceased operations because of the economic pressures. We also know at the same point that the pressures brought upon by our local governments of the continuing economy and the fewer tax dollars that are coming in is something you all have to deal with, and I am not going to take that position lightly. We know the pressures that you've been under to not only save money through employees and workers within government that have had to forego increases in their pay, given back increases in pay, but as companies and individual companies that help support the community, every single dollar today is impactful on the creation of jobs and the stability of the companies. For my company, the bad debt that we face on a regular ongoing basis because of the economic issues that people are facing has had a huge impact on us. At the same time, we have to face now what the state has done, which has increased the MBT, which is an additional tax on every single company in this community. And the fear is, if yet the city of Las Vegas takes another step forward, as well-intentioned as it could be, to stabilize your economy, what you're going to do in the end is negatively impact the entire economy. So fewer jobs are created, more jobs are lost, and what happens is your constituencies will be impacted in a much greater way. And I do understand the needs that you have, but we see day in and day out that companies are giving fewer dollars to nonprofit and community organizations, having to lay off employees on an ongoing basis just to be able to keep afloat. And every single dollar that we're impacted by fees or what I think are taxes are then seen by the company as a tougher way to keep on moving forward. And I'm not, again, I want to emphasize that I'm not just speaking about my company, but the overall business community of Southern Nevada. And these type of increased fees at this time, I think are not only throwing caution to the wind, but I think are setting a precedent that is very dangerous at this particular time, when we really have to stabilize who we are. So once this economy does turn around, the companies that are here will still be here at the time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. But anybody else wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. And Councilman?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for all of your comments, by the way, and I wish to express my appreciation to the industries that I've met with prior to this meeting in the past several weeks regarding this. And for staff's sake, thank you for being as diligent as you've been meeting with these industries to come to some kind of understanding. I am, as a councilman, all for recouping the cost to the city for when we do business and how we regulate our businesses. And I'm certainly not opposed to the city making money to continue being a world-class city that we are and continuing to provide services to the residents of this city. And I'm glad that I think Mr. Larson brought up the legislature. Mr. Shore, you did as well in your comments. And I hadn't thought about that, Councilman, in regards to how businesses have been affected by this past session. This entire state's been impacted by this past session. I think also, I know, Mr. DeFiore, you talked about, looking at some county stuff, and I'm kind of selfish as a Las Vegas City Councilman. I want businesses to come to Las Vegas, the city of Las Vegas, to do business, not Clark County. And we need to do everything we can to make it accommodating for them to do that. Make it easier, make it easier for builders, make it easier for businesses. We've got to do that, and I've been preaching that for a long time, and you guys already know that. I needed it on the record today, however. I think there's more work to be done. I don't think you're done. The comments today were wonderful, and I think we need to look at incorporating that into addressing these issues. And I must say to the industries, the economy is down today. It's not going to be like this forever. We are going to be dealing with this again. And whether it's the next city council or down the road or how many years it takes for recovery, we need to address these issues. And be prepared. When you start putting money back in the bank and you start employing people and your businesses start to grow, be prepared. We need to recoup our costs so it's not a burden on the taxpayers. We need to create and generate some kind of revenue to continue to make this city operate the way it does. We've all grown accustomed to that, and we like that. So I think there's more work to do. And I'm ready to make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead,
Hey, Val, how did you word my last motion?
Miserably.
Miserably. Well, I'm going to make.
I think it was make a motion to recommend and do not pass to the council.
That's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
That's your motion. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. And so it goes with a no recommendation to council. Thanks to everybody for coming in to speak on those two bills. I appreciate it very much. Next item on the agenda, bill number 2009-24. It levies assessment for Special Improvements District number 1485, which is Alta Drive landscape maintenance.
This is a standard levy, SID levy ordinance, landscape maintenance for FY 2010. It's in order. We have staff here from the SID section if you have any questions.
Is there any questions, Councilman, on this one? No. Anybody in the public wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and have you make a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, on agenda item 5, bill number 2009-24, I would make a recommendation for a due pass to the City Council.
Motion's been made. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes, goes to council with a recommendation to pass.
Can I vote against you just once?
Sure. It would make me feel good. Oh my goodness, another one for Simon. Bill number 2009-25, where's the crowd for this one? There's no crowd. Increases the regional sewer connection charge that funds the city's share of an alternate conveyance system to be built and operated by the Regional Clean Water Coalition.
This is a follow-up to an ordinance that was adopted in 2006 to help fund the Systems Conveyance and Operations Program. That ordinance that was adopted indicated that periodically the council would review the the connection fee and make appropriate adjustments, and it's been determined that the appropriate adjustment over the next 3 years would be to increase that charge. It's a new charge on new connections, 1.5% each, increase each 6 months over that period. The business impact statement process was gone through, ad was taken out in the newspaper, no comments were received. We recommend that you send along with the due pass. Mr. Cervantes from Public Works is here if you have any questions.
Ray, do you have any comments at this time?
Just here to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay.
I have a comment, Mr.
Please.
Chairman. This is significant because as the Clean Water Coalition continues to try to keep Lake Mead blue instead of green, this is just a small step in continuing that effort, I believe.
Yeah. This is really an increase in the tap fee.
Yeah.
This is increase to the connection fee, not the user fee, just.
Yeah, this tap connection fee, which the connection fees are almost non-existent today. As
Very little revenue coming in.
very little revenue coming in. It's this will become only meaningful as we someday reach the point where it's viable to build new structures. Okay. Does anybody want to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on this one and take a motion.
Councilman, on agenda item number 6, bill number 2009-25, I would make a motion to recommend to City Council with a due pass.
The motion's been made for a due pass recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It does pass. Go to council that way. The next item on the agenda is bill number Z 2009-1, amends the city official zoning map atlas by changing the zoning designation of certain parcels of land.
Yes, this is what we call a hard zoning ordinance. Every year we bring one or two of these forward to finalize the zonings that have been approved in the past. We wait to see if conditions have been met. We wait for legal descriptions, et cetera. All of these have been developed appropriately and are in order, and this just finalizes so that they can change the zoning designation permanently on the map, and we recommend approval.
Public hearing is open. Anybody wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilman Ross.
On agenda item 7, Councilman, bill number Z 2009-1, would follow staff's recommendation and make a motion to recommend to City Council with a due pass.
And the due pass motion is on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes. Go with the due pass. This is the time set aside for citizen participation. Does anybody wish to be heard under this portion of the agenda? Councilman Ross.
Thank you, Councilman. For the record, I'm Councilman Steve Ross, and I just want to make it known on this record today that Councilman Steinman, this may be one of your last official duties as a city councilman.
This is.
It's been an absolute honor and a privilege to serve with you in this capacity, and you've done a phenomenal job.
Thank you
very much for your service to the city.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed every minute of the last 5.5 months, and I will miss this, and I will miss everybody working with them daily, but I shall not go away. I'll be around.
I didn't think you would.
Thank you for those comments. I appreciate it. Anybody else wishing to speak on my behalf? No. With that, the meeting is adjourned.